Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's open forum. Today, as you guys know, we're going to discuss the new buyer brokerage forms. I am not an attorney. I'm going to go over them as a realtor, so you guys get the idea. But these are, just to remind you, they are made by the Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar, so realtors can fill them out. So they are should be very easy to use. You'll see there have not been many changes from the previous buyer brokerage agreement. If you ever paid attention to our trainings on that, or if you ever looked at it and read it, you'll see that there aren't many changes. So I'm going to go over that form. Do we have any questions before we begin? Okay. Okay, you can find these on Form Simplicity. That should be a question that you're asking. You can always find these on Form Simplicity. I'm going to blow this up some so you guys can see it better. There we go. Everybody see that okay? All right. So you'll see the first thing you'll see is that it's very similar to what we had before. Exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. There are 4 forms. There is the transaction broker. They're all just different brokerage relationships. There is the single agent. There is the no brokerage relationship. And then there is a single agent with a transition to transaction broker. I'm going to ask you guys that unless you have a no brokerage relationship, which is a legitimate reason to use that one, don't use the rest of them. Use the transaction broker one, please. It is, I don't know if you guys, maybe Dan can go over this better next week with agency. It's very difficult. It's most difficult ethically to go from single agent to transaction broker. A single agent has fiduciary duties. They have information that a transaction broker would not have, would not ask. For example, someone's going through a divorce, or someone desperately needs the money, or someone desperately does this or that. That is something a transaction broker does not want to know, does not deal with. A single agent can and cannot disclose that to anyone. A transaction broker works in everyone's best interest and discloses things to people. So it is a different relationship. The relationship that you guys want is a transaction broker relationship. Okay. That allows you to not have to transition later, which is a very uncomfortable conversation. And it ethically puts you in a bind if you're ever accused of, I opened my heart to Daryl. I told him everything about my situation. And I think he might have told the other side that I was desperate and needed to move next week. Right. So it's that kind of stuff that, and that hurt me in my negotiations because Daryl shared all my information with them. Right. So that's the kind of thing that puts you in an ethical bind. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I do understand agency well enough to tell you guys that. And not only that, but when you do run into one of the other 1,000+ of Florida Realty investment agents, you will not have to transition to transaction broker, which, like I said, it can be an uncomfortable conversation to have. Explain to them, well, I know you thought I was a single agent for you, but now I'm kind of, I've got to work, our brokerage works on both sides, so we're representing everybody. That's not a plus, right? So for future business with that person, for relationships with that person, it's better to just start as transaction broker and stay there. Okay. All right. So it does, the paperwork does describe the relationship that you have. Okay, but let's start with the buyer brokerage agreement. Exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. It does not say at the top here that it's a transaction broker, but this is the transaction broker one. Parties, consumer is what we're calling the customer now. It's a consumer, right? And the broker. I know you guys are going to have a question on just, one-time showings and stuff like that. I don't know if that's going to be a separate form, exactly what that's going to be, open house form, etc. But you can make this a one-day thing, right? You can make this whatever you want. You can make this, whatever, a year. You can make it 6 months. You can make it 3 months. You can make it one day. Okay. Consider enter. I'm sorry. This agreement will begin on X day and will terminate 11:59 on the whatever day. Could be the same day. However, if consumer enters an agreement to acquire property that is pending on the termination date, this agreement will continue in effect until that transaction has closed or otherwise terminated. You guys have always asked me Oh, Ryan, I have a listing and it was going to expire in 3 weeks, but we got a contract on it. Contract's not going to close until a month after my listing agreement expires. Do I need to extend my listing agreement to the closing date? No. It says here, if consumer, it's the same for listings, by the way. If consumer enters an agreement to acquire property that is pending on the termination date, this agreement will continue in effect until that transaction has closed or otherwise terminated. Okay, so if it falls through, then it falls through. But if this is just a one-day showing or one-day agreement, obviously, if they enter an agreement to acquire the property, then it's going to get you paid. You don't have to make it until all the way till closing. And we'll discuss that later. And right now you're thinking, well, what if we look at it today, but we don't write a contract till tomorrow and it doesn't get approved till 2 days later or next week? That is covered in later on in the agreement. Okay, property. Consumer is interested in acquiring real property as follows or otherwise acceptable to consumer. The type of property and the location, you guys remember this before, was a lot more information that we would put here, where they're pre-approved, all that kind of stuff. They're making it much more simple now. And this is not binding. Customer, anytime you see the word is interested, that's not binding legal information, okay? You guys know that when you'll all nod your heads when I say this. They say they want a 3-2 in Pine Hills and they buy a 4-3 in Meadow Oaks, whatever. They end up going somewhere else. They see a different kind of house that they want, or they want to buy a 4-3 somewhere nice and they end up buying a 3-2 in Pine Hills because they see what they can afford. So what they say that they're interested in and the type they buy are two different things. If this is just an open house or they want to see one property, you can just put that. Broker assistance, broker obligations, broker assistance. Broker will use brokers, professional, all the same stuff as before. Discuss property requirements and locating and viewing suitable properties. Negotiating and closing any resulting transaction. Cooperate with real estate licensees working with the owner, if any, to complete a transaction. Other consumers. Consumer understands broker may work with prospective consumers who want to acquire the same property as consumer. This is the same thing that was on it before. Fair housing, obviously. Service providers, broker does not warrant or guarantee products and services. These are all things that were on there before. Consumer's obligation. Consumer agrees to cooperate with broker in accomplishing the objectives of this agreement, including conducting all negotiations and efforts to locate suitable property only through broker and referring to broker all inquiries of any kind from any real estate licensees, property owners, or other source, Zillow, whatever. If consumer contacts or is contacted by an owner of a real estate licensee who is working with an owner or views a property unaccompanied by broker, consumer will at first opportunity advise the owner of real estate licensee that consumer is working with and represented exclusively by broker. That has not changed. Providing broker all necessary necessary third parties like lenders, et cetera, with accurate information requested by broker or third parties in connection with ensuring consumer's ability to acquire the property. Consumer authorizes broker to run a credit check to verify consumer's credit information. That's interesting. That's new. Being available to meet with broker at reasonable times for consultations and to view properties. Identifying and holding broker harmless from and against all losses, damages, costs, and expenses of any kind, including attorney's fees and from liability to any person that broker incurs because of acting on consumer's behalf. Not asking or expecting, this is obvious, breaking the law. Consulting an appropriate professional for legal, which we tell them anyway, but they say it here that they're going to do that for legal, tax, environmental engineering, foreign reporting requirements, and other specialized advice. They're going to make a diligent, good faith effort to perform the contract terms of any purchase agreement or contract to lease and sale and close the sale of any property consumer contracts to acquire. You'll see later on here, there is language that further protects you guys better than the old buyer brokerage agreement on contracting properties that fall apart. It has become much more like listing. You guys have asked me this many times. My seller wants to back out of the list, back out of a contract. Do they still owe me a commission? A lot of times they still do. All right, retainer. This is a little bit different. A non-refundable retainer fee. Non-refundable. Before we had a box, we could check whether it was. It's always been non-refundable, but before we had a box to check whether it would go toward their the money that they owed you or not. Now they're not giving us that option. They're saying it does not. A non-refundable retainer fee of X amount for broker services provided for consumer is so hard for me to say consumer because I'm used to customer or client. Is earned and payable upon execution of this agreement. This retainer is in addition to any compensation earned by broker. This retainer is in addition to any compensation earned by broker, meaning it absolutely is not applicable to what we're about to put for compensation. Broker and consumer agree that retainers for real estate services described herein and does not constitute a fee paid for a rental information list as described in, you guys remember on your test, it's the last time you heard about this, probably it was rental information lists. But the retainer is in addition to any compensation earned by broker, which I think is very interesting. Compensation. Broker's compensation is earned when, during the term of this agreement or any renewal or extension, consumer or any person acting for or on behalf of consumer, meaning they had their mom put it under contract for them. You showed the kids the house, but they're not going to qualify, so they had mom and dad put it under contract for them. That's a person acting on their behalf. They can't get around paying you because of that. Contracts to acquire real property as specified in this agreement or defaults on any contract to acquire the property. Contracts to acquire real property as specified in this agreement or defaults on any contract to acquire property. You guys have not gotten paid for buyers defaulting before. Nobody's gotten paid from buyers defaulting. You've gotten paid from sellers defaulting, sellers refusing to sell, changing their mind. They've paid compensation before, but buyers defaulting have not. This compensation is for broker services for consumer. Compensation received by broker, if any, from an owner or owner's broker for services rendered to consumer will reduce any amount owed by consumer per this paragraph. Meaning if you put 3% here and you get paid 2.5% by the listing agent, right? Like we've always done, then that 2.5 goes toward that 3. That's all they're saying, which we already know. So if you put 3% here and you get offered 3%, then that's it. Now, one thing I don't see on here, but I'm sure it's somewhere, is once you put 3% here and somebody offers you 3% plus a $5,000 bonus, you cannot take anything over 3%. That's big, made that very clear. I don't know if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, we went over every form, even if it doesn't have anything to do with anything, says they cannot make more than, you cannot make more than what you put right here. This is the line they're talking about. The same with leases. I get this question all the time. Buyer brokerage agreement. What is there one for leasing? Yes, it's the same one. And you put the lease, you just put the amount here. Okay. Purchase or exchange. This is where, guys, you can put 3% plus 350. So you would do that in this box. You would put 3% plus 350 or whatever if you want to have them pay your transaction fee. You can also do that through our affiliated business disclosure, but I like it in both places. Lease, option, whatever they're doing, this is how you get paid. Protection period. So a lot of times, guys, if you're going to do also the retainer, if you're going to do a retainer fee of $500, because you're going to be showing people a bunch of rental properties and you don't want to charge them for actual leasing, you can do that. You can say $500. You pay me right now $500. And I'll show you whatever you want for the next 2 months, right? Or whatever it is you're going to do, or $1,000 to show you whatever you want for the next 2 months. And if you're going to get paid by typically those things pay $50, $200, something like that, whatever it is. So also you could put it here, you could put $500, and then you can put, and if they get $200 from somewhere else, then they only owe you $300. So that's 2 different ways to do that. Daryl, you have a question?
Yeah, so if we're at a new construction and they have like a $5,000 bonus if we go under contract in the first 30 days or whatever, do we need to fill out a new form?
You can do that, but I think those you can do that, Daryl. But I think those bonuses are going to go goodbye. I think those. Okay. I think they're going to stop offering them because of this. Yeah, you can do that. I don't know what really incentivizes a buyer to do that unless you're going to give them part of it.
Because they like me.
Well, yeah, they can like you. That's wonderful. But, they don't want to hear about how you're making 3% plus $5,000. They're like, why don't I get $5,000 off? Why is he getting extra $5,000? You know what I mean? So for most people, if they love you, that's great. If they'll sign it, yes, absolutely. And you have them sign it that day, So then you can do that. But I think because of this, they're going to take those away and hopefully start paying 3.25% instead, or 3.5%, or, whatever. Or the ones paying 1%, maybe you'll pay 2%, wherever you guys take people. Of course, that always changes when their business is good or business is bad. They lower it when business is good, and they raise it when business is bad. You guys forgive them, which is good. All right, which is fine. Protection period. This is what I was talking about before. So you have a 1 day thing with somebody. Someone comes into your open house. Daryl has an open house, and someone wanders in, and Daryl has them sign that form because they have to sign something before Daryl really talks to them. Okay. Consumer will compensate broker, and so that's only a 1 day thing. Daryl says, just sign this up. All you're doing is looking at this house with me, or whatever. I think there's going to be a single property showing one as well. I don't know yet. That's what they've said. But let's say they don't. So they look at it and they say, I don't know. We're going to think about it. Daryl, we really like it, but we're going to think about it. And so they don't write the contract that day. They call Daryl the next day and says, you know what? We like it. So Daryl writes a contract. They don't sign that. So he writes the contract on Sunday. They don't sign it till Monday. It doesn't get accepted till Wednesday. Daryl's obviously his thing was 1 day. It's already expired, but consumer will compensate broker if within blank days after termination date, consumer contracts to acquire any property which was called to consumer's attention by broker or any other person or found by consumer during the term of this agreement. So every other property in the world is covered because it's called to consumer's attention by broker or any other person in the world or found by the consumer themselves. So that covers all 8 billion people that possibly could have found this property during the term of this agreement. Consumer's obligation to pay broker's fee ceases upon consumer entering into a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another broker after the termination date. Consumer's obligation to pay broker's fee ceases upon consumer entering in a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another broker after termination date. Can a consumer conspire with their realtor cousin just to sign something and get you out of the deal? No, because that's not good faith. They have to exercise good faith. That means they have to actually be looking with another broker, legitimately looking. Yes, Christina.
Hey, so just trying to understand, you kind of referenced open house. I'm kind of curious. I know I had asked you previously, and everything's still kind of in flux, I guess. Have they decided? I heard California had a form for open houses specifically.
I think we will too. I think we will. Okay. Single showings. I think they'll call it a single showing form, maybe even an open house form, something like that. I think we will. Yeah. I don't know what kind of. So what I have noticed in this, and this is just one man's opinion, not a legal professional or anything else. This is more broker friendly. This buyer agreement form in almost every way, except of course we cannot make more than whatever it says here. But it seems very broker friendly. They've changed some things, making the retainer not applicable to your fees. They have made a couple of things here, more obligation on the consumer, a little bit tighter. And we're going to make this, I'll get to this in a minute, but we're going to make this a condition of closing if it's legally possible. So put an asterisk next to that. We're going to make sure we have our attorney looking at it to make sure we can make it legally condition of closing. Meaning, and I know, Christina, you were one that went to the board presentation earlier on that I think Aura did, that said, oh, well, if they don't, if they refuse to pay you on the settlement statement, then you're going to have to chase them later for it in court. You don't have to chase people for your listing fees. If you have a listing agreement with someone, nobody ever backs out of that. Nobody's ever argued with you guys. I've been here 10 years. None of you guys ever called me and said, hey, this seller says he doesn't want to pay me the listing agreement, pay me or the other broker, right? It's never happened. And you don't hear people say, well, nobody wants to pay the price that's on if they do that, you don't close, right? So if they say, well, this other FAR form called the purchase and sale agreement, they don't want to adhere to the terms of that. Well, they don't want to pay the price for the house. Well, you have to, right? You have to abide by all the terms of any of these FAR forms that you signed. You're an adult. You signed these forms in good faith, and they're enforceable on the HUD. You don't have to chase people for anything else. You don't have to chase them for the purchase price. That's a FAR form that people sign. This is a real legal agreement, and in fact, it's a required legal agreement now, just like a listing agreement's a required legal agreement. And so it should be a condition of closing, and that's something that we're going to make sure that we can do. Yes, Christina.
So, okay, yeah. So just speaking to that point, so if we make it a condition of closing, is this something, I guess we don't necessarily immediately share that with a title company, but I don't know what, I mean, I guess maybe.
Only if there's ever a problem. Only if there's ever a problem. And guys, you're going to have so many things that I don't see it being a problem more than one out of, for us as a broker, one out of every, every couple of years, maybe somebody says, oh, I don't know if because the buyer got stuck paying this for some reason, and the lender's not going to cover it or whatever happens. That can happen. It's not making business easier. It's making business better for good agents and people who cover their bases and pay attention and do all the things that they need to do. So this change is not helpful. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. It's not helpful to us. The system was great before. It's ridiculous, the changes that are being made, but this is how we're going to safeguard ourselves and safeguard the money that you guys earn. And if you do it right, you'll get paid. And if you don't do it right, you won't get paid. And that will run some agents who don't do it right out of the business. That's what you guys always say you want. You good realtors, you always say you want the bad realtors run out of the business, or the half-hearted realtors, let's say, run out of the business. That's what you say you want. Well, this is it. But guess what? That comes with the market getting harder. Remember, you always say, I wish the market would toughen up a little bit so we get some of these crappy agents out of the business. Well, you want it tougher, here it is. So now you got to step up and perform. And that's what this stuff is. And it's going to make it a little bit harder, and you're going to have to cross your T's and dot your I's and do all that stuff and work a little bit harder and talk to both sides, talk to the listing agents and make sure everything's in writing and perfect. But that's how that's business. You guys get paid a lot of money when you do close deals, right? So you got to earn it. Rakesh, you have a question?
Hey, Ryan, did I hear it correctly that this is required going forward, or is it more of a best practice advisory? Or everybody, when you are a buyer's agent, you should have this in place before you show the property to your client.
Yeah. This is something that I've been preaching to anyone who would listen, which is not that many people, for 10 years now. To please use your buyer brokerage agreement because it is best practice. But now it is required. Starting in August, it's required. You might as well start. FRI is requiring it starting today. So start using the forms.
And that's essentially before you can show the property, right?
Before you do anything with these people. Okay. Yes, before you show a property.
Second question, if I may ask, is if you put certain percentage in compensation in, let's say 3%, and the seller side is offering lower, what kind of language is there so that do you have to go with what you have in this agreement, or if what is offered by the seller side is lower than this, you go with that? How do you reconcile that? That's
a great question, Rakesh. So let's say I put 3% here and the seller side is offering 1.5%,
yeah,
2%, or even 2.5%. But let's say they're offering 1% now. We got some seller who's all excited that they don't have to, they don't understand what was going on, and they're going to offer 1%.
Yeah.
But so you owe 3%. Let's make it a $300,000 house so I can do the math. So I'm owed $9,000, but they're only offering me $3,000. So I'm going to work with the lender. I'm going to work with first of all, I'm going to ask for a 2% concession at least, plus whatever my buyer wants from the seller. I've got other ways to get this money. I'm going to ask for concessions. I'm going to do whatever. So Daryl's got the listing, and I'm sorry I'm picking on Daryl, but Daryl's got his camera on. He's right in my face. So Daryl's got the listing, and Daryl told his clients, look, we need to offer, and they're like, well, we'll offer 1%. Okay, well, Daryl wants a listing. He's going to take it. Obviously, he's going to do it. He's going to warn them though that people are want to ask for concessions, and we're not very competitive unless we give concessions. Our house is only $300,000. There's going to be a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of people with not a lot of money. We're going to get a lot of FHA offers. We're going to get some VA. We're going to get, it's not going to be, billionaires buying this place. So it's good. They're already tight. These are going to be people getting from renting into owning. It's going to be tight. They're going to need some help. And now we're going to make them pay for their buyer's broker as well. So it's going to be tough. And so Rakesh is going to take his client there, and his client's going to say, but Rakesh is going to warn them, these people, I know you like this house, but these people are only offering 1%. You guys owe me 3%, just so you know. So a lot of the other properties we've been looking at are offering me 2.5% or 3%. It's perfectly fine. We're going to work this into your loan. We can do whatever. We can ask for concessions. But what I'm going to try to do as your representative is to get the seller to pay this full amount that you owe me. So I'm going to ask for an additional 2% concession, which just comes off the price. Off your effective price. Doesn't come off the purchase price, comes off your effective price. They're gonna end up paying the 3% anyway. If they won't accept that, so what happens if they won't accept that, and the buyer can't come up with the 2% extra money to buy the property? Then they move on to another property.
Sure.
If they're scraping, if they're going through the couch cushions to get their down payment already and everything, other closing costs, and they can't do it, then we move on to another property. Is that steering them as they tried to scare you? NAR tried to scare you. Is that steering them? No, absolutely not. That's what a person can and can't do. We can't buy Daryl's house because they're not offering anything, and they refuse to give us concessions and whatever else. Then we can't afford it. Then we're going to have to move on. Just the same way you couldn't afford the $500,000 house down the street from Daryl's listing because it was too much money. We can't afford it. We got to move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So we're going to fight for that, Rakesh. We're going to fight to get that paid from the seller regardless.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we go to the lender and see if they're okay to get that in there. So we'll see. We'll cover it one way or another. All right. But it's real money owed to you. So that's the bottom line. Debbie. You might be muted, Debbie. Bottom left.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was. So my question is, when we write that in under additional fees in our whatever, under additional terms under our buy-sell contract, what does that language look like?
That's what I'm going to find out next week. We'll know that before we have to start using these. But that's what we'll put. But something about this, the fees owed on this agreement or a condition of closing. Something very simple like that.
Okay, well, I'm worried about writing the contract with the appropriate language to get the seller to add the 2% back towards the buyer broker agreement versus towards the buyer's prepaids and closing costs.
Okay, we'll get that as well, but you cannot specify that that's where it's going. You might be able to on the contract. I know you can't on the MLS. Seller's offering a 2% concession. That's not to be. You'll often see it. Seller's offering a 3% concession is what they would put that can go toward your buyer brokerage rate. You can't say that.
Right. I would never put that in the MLS. I'm mad at them anyway. I want to know about my contract.
We will get that language from the attorney.
Okay. Thank you.
That'll be next week, guys, the 24th. So that same time, 10:30. All right. But I do not have that language right now. Additional fees. I looked at this earlier. I can't think of any reason you'd use additional fees. Maybe you will. I don't know what additional fees besides a retainer and the actual money that you get paid. You put your transaction fee up here. Purchase or exchange, do the 3% plus the 350 or 175, whatever program you're on. Protection period. Consumer will compensate broker if within 30 days. We went through that. Conditional termination. This is what I want to go through. This is another one. At consumer's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If broker agrees to conditional termination, if broker agrees to conditional termination of this agreement, consumer must enter a written agreement to this effect and pay a cancellation fee of whatever amount you put here. Broker may void the conditional termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in the compensation paragraph less the cancellation fee if from the early termination date to the termination date plus protection period, if applicable, consumer contracts to acquire any property which prior to the early termination date was found by consumer, called a consumer if they close on a property that fits this agreement, something that you showed them or brought to their attention or anybody brought to their attention during your period here, and they end up buying it, what it's saying is you can waive this cancellation and say you owe me this amount up here, this 3%, minus if I charged you $1,000 for canceling. Obviously, I don't get both. I give you your $1,000 back and you owe me the 3% up here. Okay? So let's say we have a client. Rakesh has a client, consumer. Someone asked her, are they consumers or clients? Well, let's just say in this case, they're consumers for now. So if Rakesh has a consumer who he shows a house to, that consumer says, yeah, I'm not interested right now. We've changed our mind for right now. We're going to slow down. We'd like to terminate this agreement. I really like that house, but we're going to terminate this agreement. So you cancel them. They pay Rakesh's $1,000 fee he put for cancellation, right? Broker may void the conditional termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in the compensation paragraph less the cancellation fee. So the broker, you can, Rakesh can cancel the conditional termination and charge them the 3% less the cancellation fee minus the $1,000 he collected already from the early termination to terminate. So if that property applies to that, something he showed them, they told him they wanted to cancel, then they go back and buy that property within whatever this date was, this 60, 90, I recommend like 60 or 90 days here. If they go back, 45 days later and put that property under contract, they still owe Rakesh. Okay. That same 3% minus whatever he charged them here, $500, $1,000, whatever it is. Guys, this is a way. So there's 2 ways to get paid, or 3 ways to get paid. If you want to do the non-refundable retainer, that's great. If you get that up front, you send it to us, we'll send it back to you. Minus 10%. Conditional termination. The consumer's request, broker may agree to conditional terminate. So you can get paid, obviously, the regular way, where you get paid most of the time, the 3% here, right, by them closing. Or you can get paid for those people who waste your time. You can get paid $500 for showing them houses for 3 weekends, or $1,000 for showing them houses, or $5,000, whatever they'll agree to pay here. If they say, you know what, Daryl, we're sorry we wasted your time. We found something on our own, right? But they can't do that anymore because they found it during this period. But they can say, we're not going to buy right now, right? We decided not to buy. Well, guess what? We'll go back to Rakesh. Rakesh, they owe you that $1,000 for showing them houses for 3 weekends, or 1 weekend, or 1 day, whatever it was. So this is another way to get paid. You get paid to retainer, non-refundable up front. You get paid by selling the house. Obviously, that's the ideal. Or you get paid by them canceling on you and saying they don't want to buy right now. Or they want to work with another broker. Or they want to do whatever. They pay you here. Okay? 3 ways to get paid. That's why I said this is a little more broker friendly than the old buyer brokerage agreement. The business is getting less broker friendly, but this agreement is more broker friendly. This agreement will be construed under Florida law. Same stuff. Okay. Arbitration. We're going to talk about that as well with our attorney, whether or not we want to do arbitration. We may or may not be initialing this along with them, but we'll let you know. Assignments, persons bound may assign this agreement to another broker. Agreement will bind and in your brokers and consumers' heirs, personal representatives, successors, and assigns. I'm not sure what this is about. This is interesting, and we'll find out again from the attorney on this. Broker may assign this agreement to another broker. I don't know why we'd ever do that. I guess we could do that if you leave your brokerage and come to FRI. Your other broker could send this to you. We could assign this. I've never, you know what I mean? Because they don't want to. Let's say one of you guys, let's say Daryl has a buyer on the line and he wants to leave FRI. I guess there will be a form for this. I don't know, because FRI is not going to keep his buyer. We don't know this buyer, and he can take his buyer with him, just like you guys do with listings. We've never kept anybody's listing because we don't know your seller. You do, and they're going to. If we tried to keep it, they would just cancel and sign with you at another brokerage anyway, and that's what they would do with this as well. So I've never seen this before, but this is interesting. Brokerage relationship. Broker will act as a transaction broker. Broker will deal honestly and fairly. These are your transaction brokerage duties. When you have a transaction brokerage relationship, broker will deal honestly and fairly, will account for all funds, obviously, will use skill, care, and diligence in the transaction, will disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of the residential property which are not readily observable to buyer, will present all offers and counter offers in a timely manner unless directed otherwise in writing, and will have limited confidentiality with buyer unless waived in writing. Limited confidentiality. Okay, that's a little different from single agent. Other terms, this is where we were talking about before. We'll do the condition of closing. Olga just asked that question in chat. this is where we make this a condition to closing. We're going to work on that language with our attorney and make it in every form that we use here. And here we go. Here we go again. Broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to with consumer, meaning that builder bonus cannot take it if it's more than what you have in this agreement. All right. However, consumer agrees that broker may receive separate compensation from owner of the property for services rendered to owner by broker for which consumer will not be responsible. I'll see what that's about because I don't know what services rendered to the owner by broker would be, but we'll see what that is. That could be a listing agreement, obviously, where we get other money because it was Daryl's listing and Rakesh represented the buyer. Obviously, we would get separate compensation from the owner of the property for services rendered. Yes, Rakesh.
So in this, is the going forward, it will be called consumer instead of buyer?
I don't know. Obviously, in this, no, you can call them buyer. I mean, we're going to talk to each other like they're buyers. So yes. And this whole thing was about buyer brokerage. In fact, this is called a buyer brokerage agreement still. So yes, you can still call them buyers.
Sure.
I don't know why it says consumer throughout here. I don't know what the legal thing is. There was customer before. You have to be careful not to call people clients as much as customers with certain relationships that you have with them. Consumer, I like consumer. I like the term consumer actually, because that's more of what they are. Consumers. So you guys understand this. And any of you guys have had legal problems with clients or customers before? We've discussed it, and it doesn't.
But this one is. But Ryan, this is not called exclusive consumer brokerage agreement. This is called exclusive.
Right. Yeah, you can call them buyers. You can call them whatever you want, Rakesh. The police aren't coming after you for this. I'm just telling you that courts and stuff. When you go to court against previously a client or whatever, courts are known to be very consumer friendly and protect the non-professionals in the agreement, like you would hope they would if you were the non-professional, if you had a suit against a doctor or something. Yes, Yvonne.
Hi, good morning to all.
Morning.
Just to be clear, with the question that Rakesh mentioned, ask you. So we're calling only consumer just for this particular form, right? Moving forward, there are clients.
You can call them whatever you want.
All right.
Nobody's enforcing this. I don't know why they're just not calling the client here. They're not calling them the buyer either, even though it's a buyer brokerage agreement. The answer to that is I don't know what that has to do with agency. I don't think it has anything to do with it. Let me check the other agency forms. No, single agent form has everybody consumer also. No brokerage, also consumer. So no, they all have consumer throughout this. Everything's the same. All the other forms are the same, guys, except for at the bottom, the brokerage relationship. And I'm going to go through the chat. Karen, so we can't be a single agent and have a buyer client if we're selling FRI property that we are not the listing agent for, only for listings outside of our office. Just be a transaction broker. Just use a transaction broker form. It doesn't matter if it's your listing, it's anyone in our office. And we have hundreds and hundreds of listings that you're going to run across. Every month we have you guys, 2 agents who don't even know each other that work with us, who sell properties together, one on each side. So it happens all the time. You need to be a transaction broker to not have to consent to transition to transaction broker. That is the only problem, Karen. If you do it, you just have to you have to have them fill out a consent to transition to transaction broker. Florida law allows real estate licensees to represent a buyer or seller as a single agent to change from single agent relationship to a transaction brokerage relationship in order for the licensee to assist both parties in a real estate transaction by providing a limited form of representation to both the buyer and the seller. This change in relationship cannot occur without your prior written consent. So they have to agree to a limited form of representation. So that's just an uncomfortable conversation to have with them. What does this mean is what they're going to ask you and say, all that stuff that you told me about your personal stuff and confidentiality. is not really, it's confidential now. I can't say it to anybody, but I know it, and we're working both sides of it. So you guys are representing the other side too. Yeah, technically it's Daryl in my office, but it's just not a fun conversation to have. It just doesn't build trust. That's why, if you want to do it, it's an extra step when you run across this, and it doesn't make the consumer, the customer, feel very warm and fuzzy. That's all. Alexi, if the seller's agent is offering 2.5 and we have 3% in there, buyer's agent can sell for 2.5 or get the 5% from the buyer, right? Not the other way around. If 7A has 2, but listing is, yes, everything you've said here is correct. If the seller's agent is offering 2.5, but we have 3% on our buyer brokerage agreement, yes, the buyer's agent can settle for 2.5 or get sorry, somebody just posted something and knocked it down, and get the 0.5% from the buyer. Yes, you can settle for the 2.5, or you can get the additional 0.5% from the buyer. Yes, but not the other way around. Correct. If our buyer brokerage agreement says 2% and someone's offering 3%, 2% is all you're going to get. So yes, all your assumptions are correct, Alexi. Karen, what documentation will we need to get from listing agent to prove the amount of compensation that the seller is offering? That was last week or 2 weeks ago. There's forms for that. I included them on your, when I sent out the invitation for the open forum 2 weeks ago. It says something about the forms. They're all on there. How do you enforce these payment? And they're not very complicated, Karen. I went over them, but they're not very complicated. You can watch the on YouTube, watch the training from 2 weeks ago. How do you enforce these payments? Oh, we talked about that. In the example of new construction bonus of, let's say, with $1,000, but the buyer agreement is for 3%, how would the bonus be handled? You're not going to handle it, Alex. You can go through, like Daryl said, you can have them sign a new form that allows you to keep the 3% plus 1,000. But let's say you have on there 4%, and you're getting offered 3% plus 1,000. You can take that because it's going to be under 4%. Okay, Malvis is gone. Any other questions or comments? Tammy has a hand up.
Hey, I'm multitasking, kind of driving. We're still assumed a transaction agent, right?
Yes, transaction brokerage relationship. You are assumed to be that, and I wish you guys would just stick with that paperwork because that's awesome. That's why you're assumed to be that, because that's the easiest and best way to represent. Do you have duties to the other party as a transaction broker? Yes. You deal honestly and fairly with both sides. You have duties to both sides, and that obviously the disclosure of any material defects, obviously, but also you have to deal honestly and fairly with both sides.
And you said at the beginning that there is a particular buyer broker form that's specifically for transaction broker.
Yeah, that's the one you guys are going to use, hopefully. That's
right.
The one
okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Okay. Got it.
Chad, can you put up to 5% to manage bonuses or extra comp? Yes. If a buyer will sign something that says 5%, I don't know about up to 5%, but yeah, if a buyer will sign something that says 5%, yes, you can put $1 million in there if a buyer will sign it. And I don't mean to exaggerate too much, but you get that you can do that. You can put whatever amount that a buyer will agree to. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong form. You can put whatever amount a buyer will agree to in this blank. Okay, and these blanks. Again, if you're going to charge the 350 or whatever, use the second one over here where you can put plus 350. And you can follow it up with the affiliated broker disclosure. Affiliate business disclosure that we have for FRI. If you are not charging your guys, remember the affiliated business disclosure. If you guys are not charging your client the 350, or even if you're on the 175 program, I recommend getting the one that says 350. Our affiliated business disclosure that says 350. We have one that says 175. We have one that says 350. Get the one that says 350 and mark it out. Whether you're charging them or not, have everybody sign that, guys. Again, we're presenting value here. Your mean old broker charges 350. Either if you're having to pay it, great, just have them sign it. So, yep, my broker charges 350. Most brokers charge more, right? Or if you're not charging it, say, my mean old broker charges 350, but I'm going to cover that for you guys because you were referred by, Sam and Susie. or I'm going to cover it for you guys because I like you, whatever, because I'm the best agent ever, whatever it is, or I'm going to pay for half of that for you guys. I'm going to pay it's $350, but I'm going to cover half of it for you guys. So it's only going to be $175 for you, whatever you want to do. Yes, Tammy.
I didn't put my hand down because I'm like driving on my phone, so I'm done. I don't have another question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Well, and I'm saying before we move on, there's not much more to share about this. Yes, Christina.
Hey, so my question pertains to kind of what we were talking about just a moment ago with, the percentage to put there. I'm assuming it's okay to say, whatever the percentage is going to be that you're going to request, and then say, buyer's agent agrees not to charge buyer more than XYZ. So, maybe something is basically stating, hey, this is my fee. In the event that the seller doesn't pay all of this, I won't charge the buyer more than X%.
That's supposed to be the number that's on there. I don't know if that's legal or not. We can talk to the attorney. That's supposed to be.
I mean, I know we could agree to charge them. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're go ahead.
Because we can always negotiate and charge, like, let's say, we have 3%. So say, hey, we're not going to charge you more than 2.5. Because we can always negotiate ourselves between the buyer. So, what I'm trying to do is just, legitimize that in writing so they have a little peace of mind, like, hey, XYZ, the max I'll charge you because you're a repeat customer or whatever it is.
Yeah, the 10% of you guys who've been using buyer brokerage agreements have always been putting 3% or whatever in there. And if it's 2.5%, you haven't been pursuing the other half. Yes, you can do that. But is there a way to write it in there? I suppose there is. But what if they only offer 1%? What if they don't offer anything? And so you can't say we're not going to pursue. If you're short, we're not going to pursue it. You can say we're only going to pursue up to 2.5%. You can say whatever you want, but then it gets a little bit tricky on that language. You know what I mean? It has to be, you can't put a range on there. I know they said that too. You can't put up to $10,000 or something like that. You have to put an amount.
Right. But I'm saying, like, okay, I'm charging 3%, and then I'm not to charge, like, buyer more than whatever the percentage is, 2.8%. In the event that seller does not cover, the
Okay, but you're getting into let's talk about that with the attorney, because you're getting into splitting hairs about what's covered by what's covered and what's not covered by the other side, whether that be through concessions, whether it be through negotiating, whatever. So you're kind of splitting hairs there on legally what's the other side paying for, what are they not paying for, what if they don't offer anything, and you have to negotiate concessions. Then we're talking about what are you covering and not covering, and how's a lender going to look at that? What if it's just done through the lender? How are they going to look at that? So it's difficult to say what you're going to pursue and not pursue based on what the seller's offering, the seller's broker's offering, how to word that. So I'd rather an attorney tell you how to do that, or if it's even possible.
Okay.
But they've been very clear that it's not okay to put a range on there. So I don't know. It doesn't. And now we're talking about legally binding documents. I don't know how they're going to enforce that. They can't tell you what to put on a contract. We can write whatever we want in the terms at the bottom of a contract. We can say, they're going to throw in the camel and the donkey. We can put that at the bottom of a contract, but but we can't put a range in here. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if that counts as a range, but just saying, hey, if the seller pays me nothing, I won't charge you more than X. So we're going to pursue the seller for this. With your permission, I'll negotiate for this number. Yeah. But let's say they don't pay me anything, I won't charge you more than that. So I mean, I don't consider that a range, but
legally that's supposed to be the number. Legally, I don't think you're supposed to put on here, we won't pursue you if you don't pay it.
But I won't pursue more than X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? Like if it's a lower number.
Yeah, but then you are making a range.
Okay.
I mean, legally, that's a range. You're saying you owe me this amount, but I won't. You owe me $100, Christina, but if you only pay me $50, I won't mind. I mean, that's a range, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we yes, but at the same time, I mean, I know, like, we have the capability to lower our fee at any point, with Carissa's permission. So I'm just trying to figure out how to enunciate that, or,
I don't
Yeah.
have, I don't disagree with you. They've been very clear about the range thing. So I'd rather have somebody else's opinion on that, because I don't know. It could certainly be, I'm playing devil's advocate. It certainly could be argued that's a given range. So, and you're right too. It could be argued both sides. So I'd rather have a legal opinion on that. I apologize. Rakesh.
Ryan, I may have missed this point, but want to clarify. So this form you are kind of walking us through today, or walk through us today, it's available immediately, or it will be from August 1st? And
It's supposed to be from August 17th or whatever the actual date is.
Between now and 1st of August, we continue to use the old form. What is there on there?
Oh no, use this form now. There's no reason not to use this form. It's a better. This is a better form than the old form. I'm telling you.
So use this form. We will have a attorney session next week, but this is the form going forward.
This is the form going forward. This form is better than the form that's on there right now. I can guarantee you that. There's like 3 examples I've given you guys why this is a better form for us.
And is it also probably safe assumption that this will be one of the forms probably will be expected to be uploaded to the portal when you are doing the closing documentation
it's going to be required from now on the
right
buyer.
Yeah,
as a buyer side, it's going to be a checklist item on Paperless Pipeline for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because we have to have these. You guys have to have one of these.
Yeah.
You're never going to win any argument with anybody if you don't have one of these. If you ever have a problem with a deal and they didn't sign one of these, or if you ever want to get paid and they didn't sign one of these, there's going to be a problem. You're going to be out of luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Or if the MLS ever suspects that you don't have one and they ask you to produce it, just like these MLS exclusion forms, they'll fine you and whatever else. I think it's a huge fine they've already said that you'll be liable for. Yes, John.
I have a buyer that I previously, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, had signed the old agreement. Obviously, I should probably get her to sign the new agreement now.
Yeah, I mean, you're fine with the old agreement. Nothing was required. This isn't required as of right now.
Okay. And then the other thing on Section 3 property, where it says location, because we had talked about this a while ago, about putting it down in a buyer broker agreement. We're looking in the Volusia County beach area. Is it sufficient to put that in there for location?
Yeah. Yes. And again, this isn't going to be, I don't care if you put location Sarasota and they decide you have a paper trail where they started sending you Daytona properties all of a sudden. Okay. That's you're fine. You're covered with that. They changed their mind. They've altered the agreement. That is not if you read number 3 here, property consumer is interested in acquiring it. Anywhere it says interested that's not a legal term. That's not a real, or as otherwise acceptable. They've agreed that it's otherwise acceptable as soon as they started being interested in those properties. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you put Flagler County and they decide to go down to Volusia, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Lori is next.
Hi. I may have missed this, but is there some way to put it into the purchase contract that the seller will pay the contracted commission for the buyer?
In the contract, yes.
And it can be worded that way?
Yes. In the contract, it can. Yes.
Okay. Will we
Not
be
in the
getting?
MLS.
Excuse me?
You can't agree to it in the MLS, but in the contract, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. They made it very clear. FAR had a town hall last week, and they said you can write that in the contract, which is, yes, an agreement. Now, so follow this logic. It is, because I said before, that's an agreement. I think I said last week before I saw that town hall, I said they don't want you doing that because that's what I had seen before, because that's an agreement between the buyer and the seller. It has nothing to do with brokers. But now you have, and so they could always negotiate you out later. Buyer and seller could talk directly without their brokers and negotiate you out, because that's an agreement between those two. Brokers don't sign the purchase and sale agreement, right? So theoretically they could do that. However, the seller has a listing agreement that they have to pay for, and the buyer has a buyer's agreement that they have to pay for. And so if they negotiate you out, they're negotiating themselves out of the money. and they have to pay you. So now they have a legally binding document that they have to pay you. So the buyer cannot negotiate their way out of owing you that money. Okay.
Okay,
So-
now what about, and that, because I was listening to concessions, a percent of concessions, and I know that, like maybe somebody needs 3% to help them with their closing costs. So raising the concessions, building their commission to their agent into the concessions wouldn't work for them because they're going to need that money for their closing costs. So just putting it into the contract that the seller will pay the buyer's contracted closing commission of say 3%. That won't interfere with any rules for FHA.
No, FHA can go up to, I believe, 6%. And so you would do 3% for the buyer and 3% toward closing costs and
Yeah,
prepaid.
but let's say they need the maximum in order to
Well,
close.
somebody's got to pay you then. The seller's got to pay you, or you move on to another property. They can't afford it.
Okay, so so I would have to put it into the concessions, and if that concession exceeds what they're going to be able to use for their closing costs, we move on.
You're going to have to move on if the seller won't agree. The seller can still pay you 3%, okay, or whatever they want to. And you're still going to call the listing agent and see what they'll pay. And if they say nothing, seller just doesn't want to pay. This isn't going to happen that often. I don't foresee percentage-wise. I mean, it's going to happen thousands of times, but not that often percentage-wise.
Well, I guess
You're still going to call the listing agent and say, what are you guys offering or what are you guys offering a buyer's broker on that property? And they're going to say 3% or 2.5% or nothing, right? Or 1%, whatever they're going to say. And only if they don't offer anything or enough is when you're going to ask for the concessions. There's also a concession field on MLS where they're offering 3% concessions. A lot of them are still going to say 0% concessions, and you're going to have to call them and they're going to say, oh no, we're still paying buyer brokerage, but we're not offering concessions. Okay. So, I mean, they can be negotiated, but we're not offering them. So it's all just like before. You're good, but you're going to call, instead of seeing it on MLS, the 2.5% or 3% or whatever it is, you're going to have to call Daryl, and Daryl's going to tell you, yes, my seller, they're offering 3%.
Yeah, okay, so, but for purposes of FHA, the concession, you can't have a separate concession pertaining to your commission.
Yeah,
It has to be,
not on the MLS, but you can on the thing. No, they're not going to allow you to go up to 12% or something. No. Whatever FHA, and they may expand it, VA is now allowing it, or will be allowing it. And FHA may be raising theirs so they can do stuff like that. Okay.
Okay, because they have to realize that we're between a rock and a hard place here.
For sure. But you know what? That's going to hurt sellers too. Show them another property then. If they can't afford it, they can't afford it. And you can move them on to another property because they can't afford to pay you. Before we were obligated to find them the best property, even if we made less money. Even if Daryl only offered 1.5%, but that was the best property and your buyers loved it, you were obligated to sell them that property and just take your 1.5%. Or you should have had a buyer brokerage agreement where you try to go after the other 1.5% and try to get a concession on that. You could have done that before too. But now now we have signed forms that say they owe us that money. So we owe them all the duties that we owe them, and they owe us that 3%. By hook or by crook, we got to get that 3% from somewhere. And if the seller's not willing to cooperate and they don't have enough money to close if they pay it, even with concessions or anything else, nobody's willing to cooperate and pay it. They just can't afford it. We got to move on to a property that offers us a commission.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
That's not
Thank
steering. That's not anything else. That's what a person can and can't do. That's what our client can't not do. Just like they can't buy $1 million house if they're out there shopping for $300,000 house. They can't buy $1 million house. They also can't come up with extra money to pay other fees, right?
Right.
So you're good, and you can move on to another property. Christina.
So I guess two questions. I'm curious, what are our obligations in terms of if we want to fire the customer? Are we, I'm assuming there's probably some language in there to address that. If it's just not a good fit, are we permitted to just say, hey, I'm going to I'm going to terminate this contract?
I did not see that in here. I'd have to look over it again, but yeah, you can terminate it. Obviously, you can fire a customer, and obviously you don't get a cancellation fee. You probably have to return their retainer. I don't see it in here though. I'm sure it's in here, but I don't see it in here. That's a great question. That's a really great question because I don't see it. But you'd have to return. I'm sure they'd have to return their retainer. If they give you a $500 retainer and this thing is for 6 months and you don't work with them for 6 months, you're going to have to return it. Line 10, paragraph 10, dispute resolution. It doesn't say. It doesn't say who. No, it doesn't say that in there. All right. So it should say conditional termination should be the. It doesn't say that the broker can agree a consumer's request, but consumer has to pay them a cancellation fee. So if the consumer does, that's funny. No, I don't see it in here. That's a great question. But yeah, you can. You just can't keep any of their money.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean,
And then
sure
okay. I'm curious what, if anybody is aware, like I saw VA was allowing, I didn't know if anybody had the specifics on, I can go look it up on what the VA is permitting in terms of, buyers to pay buyer agency compensation. And then I thought that with the lenders, they are now permitted to somehow like the conventional and FHA was somehow, there was an increase to that allowable concessions, but I don't know if that's correct. If anybody knows,
that's what we had Paul in here saying that VA is going to allow, I think 3% or something like that, and that FHA was going to raise theirs by 3%. But I don't think that part's not been done yet. The VA has agreed.
Okay. Right.
But I'll have the lender in after the attorney, just to clarify all that kind of stuff, probably on the 31st.
Okay, great.
Karen.
So is there any discussion about when we call and we talk to the agent, we find out what the seller is going to do for a co-broke, of getting something in writing from that brokerage so that, we show it and we think it's one commission, and then we put it under contract and they go, oh, well, we told you 3, but we're only going to do 2.
No, Karen, that's what I said 2 weeks ago. I did it. I showed all the forms. We went over them all.
I missed that one.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I'll go back.
Your question that you asked that in chat, and I answered it in chat. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So look on YouTube.
Okay.
Or even you can see the forms if you just look at my invitation to the open forum from 2 weeks ago.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's all it is. They're very simple. They're almost like when you show a FSBO or just commission agreements. And so yes, absolutely. Send that in. Send that in to them. All right.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem. Roger. Roger, you might be on mute, bud. All right, we'll come back to you, Roger. Lisa.
Hi, Ryan. Did you say that we don't have to do anything special yet for open houses? Anything new with these forms until August 17th?
That is correct.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, if the broker agreement form, if an agent takes them to an open house and starts having people sign them, then buyers may get confused by that now, and then maybe later we might do business with the same person to find out they may not know that they have signed an agreement.
Oh, we're gonna have to educate them on everything we do. I do believe open houses will have their own forms. They're not out yet. I do believe they will have their own forms.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Roger, you with us? I don't know. You might be trying to unmute. It's the little button, microphone button. There you are.
Yes, I'm here. Question: is this being recorded?
This presentation?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And also, this form here, is this the one that we have to have signed prior to doing a showing, or is there a different form?
Prior to working with them at all, yes. This
Okay.
is the one. Now, there may be a one-time showing form coming up, and there may be an open house form coming up, or the one-time showing might be the open house one. So I do not know. I've heard all kinds of talk about that from the people who should know, but I haven't seen anything yet. This is the latest things to come out. These 4 buyer brokerage agreements. They're all, the language is the same in all of them except for the relationship part at the bottom.
Okay, sounds great.
So there's a no broker relationship one. There's a single agent one. There's a transaction broker one, which is the one I've been going over, which is the one I want you guys to use. That is best practice for you guys to use a transaction broker one. And there is one that has a single agent, but a consent to transition to transaction broker, which is.
And if they refuse to sign this agreement, then you just don't show them any homes or anything like that.
Yeah, and you're not going to get a lot of pushback, Roger, because nobody else. I can't show them a house if they didn't sign yours. Christina can't show them if they don't sign your. If they won't sign yours, they won't sign hers. They won't sign mine. They won't sign anybody else's. So, I mean, they can't look with Keller Williams. They can't look with anybody else. So they're going to have to sign somebody, or nobody's going to show them a house.
Okay, I agree.
I mean, that's the rules now. When you tell people the things are the rules, then they're the rules. I mean, people they understand. You're truthfully telling them this is required now. I cannot show you. Nobody can show you a house. No realtor or anybody that uses MLS. Nobody can show you a house without looking at this. Okay, and this goes for our Thompson people as well. By the way, guys, our Thompson brokerage is up and going. There is no reason for you to move over to it until you start getting approached for money again by the board. So those of you who've asked about it, there's no advantage to it until you don't have to pay the board later in the year, if that's what you want to do. Then we will have, I will give you a lot more information about what it actually means, how it changes things for how you do business to be a Thompson broker. We do have a Thompson brokerage. It is up and going. We have a couple people on there, but those are not people who are already board members. There's no reason to move over. If you're already a member of Aura or another board, there's no reason to move over until you have to pay again, because you don't get refunded, the $400 you haven't used yet with the board. So until they start asking you for money in October, whenever they start asking, there's no reason to move yet. All right. Bonnie.
Hi, Ryan. You mentioned before working with them at all. So does that also include, let's say you get an online buyer lead and you just want to start sending them some listings? Do we have to sign something with them in order to just email them listings? Or when we actually start showing in person with them?
Best practice is to do it right away. I have to do this with you before I show you anything.
Okay.
All right. You ever sold a house, Bonnie, without meeting the person? You ever go take a video and sell the house?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
You were working with them the whole time. That's,
Okay.
I mean, if you can sell a house over email and videos, then you can have them sign this like that
So
way.
whatever's considered
They
working
may
with
never
them.
come look at the house. Right. They may never come look at the house, and this protects you. So that is best business practice. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
I think the rule is showing it, but I, as an FRI agent, I would appreciate if you do it right away.
Sure. Thank you.
You bet. Okay. We're going to talk about one more thing before we go, before we move on. FRI, I've been here 9.5 years, and our fees when I started were $350 and $175 if you do the $30 a month, which has not changed. Those numbers are going to be changing for new people, not for you guys. You guys signed an agreement at $350 and $175, and you're doing all that. So for new people, those fees are going to go up. So when you send your friends to join FRI, our fees are going to be $199 and $399. So our $350 is going to $399. It is just inflation. It's been at least 10 years. I think when she started the business in 2007, it was $350 with no option for $175. But now it's going to be $399. But still lower than most brokerages, and that's the only money we get. And so our new expert closer is going to be $199. But for those of you who are here, no, not starting today. But it doesn't matter. It's only for new people. So not for you guys. Anyway, if you hear my voice right now, this does not pertain to you. Just anybody you send to us. It's going to be $399, or anybody who joins us We don't have the paperwork done yet, but that's just something that we're going to be doing soon. But those of you who hear my voice right now, it is still $350 for you and still $175 for you, and that's it. All right. Any other questions or comments? Do you guys have any questions about that? I just want to be very clear. Not changing yours. Yours is still whatever you are now. You signed paperwork with us, an independent contractor agreement that says we're going to give you 100% of your commission, and we're going to charge a transaction fee of either $350 or $175, depending on what program you're on. And that will not change. Okay. But our new paperwork for people who join us in the near future is going to say different numbers. Yes, Lori.
I have never heard the term Thompson. Could you explain that a little?
I will. Thompson Brokerage is, I'll give a brief history. In Atlanta, in the 1980s, 90s, there were several inner city brokerages who did not find it, who banded together and sued because they did not find it fair that you had to join the local board of realtors to get MLS, which is deemed to be vital to your industry. And they said, we can't afford that. And so they took it to court, and the court agreed. It went all the way to the 11th Circuit Court, which is the court that covers Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And those are the only 3 states that you can have a Thompson brokerage. Thompson was the name of the lead plaintiff in that case. So it's called a Thompson brokerage now, where you can join the MLS if you are not otherwise a member of a local board. Your brokerage can join the MLS without joining the local board, and any agent that joins under that brokerage can join the MLS without joining the local board. It is restricted in some areas of what information you can access, but Vivian said you're considered a subscriber, not a voting member of the board, but it is an available option for you guys. If you're already a member of your board, like I said before, you just stick with it until they start asking you for money. And then if you want to switch to Thompson, you can. But we have a Thompson brokerage. We still have our board member brokerage that most of you are on. And we also have a referral brokerage for those who don't want to be MLS or local board or anything anymore, don't want to pay anything, just want to keep their license active. Then we have that as well. And some of you guys on this call right now are on that. In fact, some of you from all 3 brokerages are on here.
So I would be able to avoid paying my local board dues.
Yes.
As being a member of the, okay, and yet all of my privileges from the MLS would stay the same. I just
for the most part, we'll go over all that. For the most part, yes. You still have access to forms. You still have access to everything, all the data that everybody else has.
And I could put listings in, and there'd be no problem.
Correct. You cannot call yourself a realtor. You have to change your business card at some point because you cannot call yourself a realtor.
Well, I haven't seen that. I'll tell you, I haven't experienced that particular designation as being much of a bonus.
I know.
Nobody knows anything.
Right. And I don't want to cut you off. I do want to cut off this topic until we'll cover it after all this other smoke has blown over. You guys won't be asked for any more money from your boards until after all this smoke has blown over, just because of the timing of it. And so we'll talk about this later. I'll go over the Thompson. We'll have a whole presentation on it. Okay.
I look forward to it.
Great. And we'll do that. I promise we'll do that. Any other questions about these forms? You still, just so you know, Thompson brokerage or not, you'll still be required for these forms. That is an MLS thing. And as you guys know, if you want to do business, you're going to need the MLS. As an MLS thing, it doesn't matter that you're not part of NAR. With some of these things, it is an MLS rule that the local brokerages, the local associations own every MLS in the state of Florida. All but like the Northwest, there's a couple of MLSs in the country that are not owned by associations, and they are bucking these rules, by the way. They are still offering compensation and stuff, but that is in the Pacific Northwest and one other area, I don't remember. But so for everyone within the sound of my voice, and certainly everyone licensed in the state of Florida, we have to follow these new rules. All right. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, yes, Daryl.
Of course, I had to do it last minute. I'm still seeing a lot of people ask for other agents to do open houses.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a good one. And Dr. Phillips popped up today. Why are people not doing these open houses?
Jika just asked me to do one in Dr. Phillips, and unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town this weekend, and I would definitely do it. Dr. Phillips, are you kidding? It's a no-brainer.
I don't know, Daryl. I don't know. I nobody has called me and said, Ryan, I'm making too much money. I don't know how to make less money. And but still, people, I get some of those opposite calls. You know, what can I do to help my business? You can work an open house. Yvonne's available. Yvonne, go on our FRI page. Guys, check our FRI agents page. Check our FRI agents page. If you're not a member, I'll approve you right now. You have to ask to be a member. It's closed. It is no, because I don't want a bunch of advertising and other people on there clogging it up. It is just for us to talk, intra-office communication. And have you heard about CenturyLock? Yes, we discussed that at length last week. It was not a pleasant conversation. I'm not going to address that right now, but we can soon. You're going to need to go through all that stuff. So, and Adele, I'm sorry, we'll talk about it again later. But we did talk about it last week at length. If you want to check out that, Michaela just posted our YouTube page. So if our YouTube channel, so if you want to go in there and look at last week's thing, we talked at length about CenturyLock and Supra and all of that stuff. Chad, yeah, if you guys have anything up in North Lake County or Marion County or somewhere like that, or West Volusia, Chad would be interested in working those closer to Ocala. He's up in Ocala. If you guys have anything in Ocala that you want to refer to somebody, Chad is great. Chad's also a lender if you want to talk to him about loaning money or anything like that. Not personal money, but on houses. Vivian. Oh, sorry. I want to go back to Daryl real quick. Daryl. Yeah, open houses. Yeah, people work them. Work open houses. If you want to improve your business, work open houses. We've been talking so much about all this nonsense, rules changing and CenturyLock and this and that, just maintaining housekeeping stuff that we haven't gotten to talk about growing your business lately, which is that's my favorite thing to talk about is growing your business and selling houses. And that's a great way to do it. So thank you for bringing that up, Daryl. I forgot the main mission of what we do here, which is to sell houses. Vivian.
Well, on the open house note, I agree. It's a great way to do business, and especially since it'll give you practice presenting the buyer brokerage agreement. It's like a, little test run for yourself if you need. But the other thing is, please give us time so that we can prepare for the open house by running comps and doing the things that we like to do to prepare and to advertise it personally and stuff. A lot of times people want me to do an open house that weekend. This one, obviously, in Dr. Phillips has given us a lot of notice. Unfortunately, I had another commitment or I would have jumped on it. But give people time to prepare. Don't just ask them to open house the next day. And as for the reason I raised my hand, Cheryl asked a great question. Is the listing agreement going to be updated in regard to compensation to the buyer's broker?
Okay, it was updated quickly before. Yes, I'm sorry I missed that question. It was updated very soon after this thing happened to say, because it used to say you can't put it on MLS without compensation, to say you do not have to offer compensation to put it on MLS. They changed that one line under the compensation part where we offer cooperating compensation. I don't know what else they're going to change to it. They might change, just so you know, it can't be on the MLS. I don't know. But as of right now, no, it was already changed to say that, the newest one. So make sure you're using the one from 24, because whatever month it was, June of 24 or whatever, when they fixed it, they said maybe May of 24. When this first came down, they changed it to say, because it used to say, just so you know, if you're going to put this on MLS, you have to offer compensation. Now it says, just so you know, you don't have to offer compensation, and we can't put it, or it doesn't say we can't put on MLS, I don't think, but you don't have to offer compensation. So it is changed in that regard. Yes, Roger.
One last question regarding the retainer fee. Now, is that a fee that the consumer will pay you up front, or is that included in the closing costs?
Retainer's paid up front, and it says non-refundable retainer fee. It is paid up front.
And that is also prior to you showing them a home or doing
Upon
business?
execution of this agreement. Yep, upon execution of this agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So they're going to pay you right then. They hand you a money order in the driveway of the first house you show them, whatever you're doing with them, or you meet them at Panera Bread or whatever. They give you a money order or whatever made out to Florida Realty Investments. Do not have them make it out to Roger Moss. They have to, any money that you make in real estate has to go through your broker. So they make it out to Florida Realty Investments, and we turn it around to you.
Okay, that also include the fee of the $350, or you don't charge for it?
No. I mean, you can make it whatever you want to include whatever you want, but it's not. It's an addition. This is something they've changed. It used to have a box. The old buyer brokerage agreement has a box of you can click it. It is applied to or not applied to the compensation below. This time it says in addition to any compensation earned by broker. So that means you're still going to get 3% plus this $1,000 they handed you in the parking lot. So, or $500, whatever you want to make that. It could be $100, it could be $50, whatever makes you feel good. And they'll agree to it. So it does not go toward that 3%. There you go.
All righty. Thank you.
You bet, sir. Lori.
Yes, when you're putting the compensation in this, you cannot say I just want to confirm, you cannot say whatever percent plus any offered bonuses.
Nope. Absolutely not. They're very, very, very serious about that.
Boy, they hate the idea of people making any living, do they?
This is all part of the settlement. I don't know why.
Okay. Well, just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
You bet. I don't know why this was included in the settlement, why, how offering a bonus is hurting the seller. I mean, they offer a bonus if they want to. If they don't, they don't. But that's been the compensation thing from the beginning. They could have offered $1 before. So if this lawsuit ever took place, it should have been sued for $1 for every person who did that. Is what the thing should have done. Yes, Natalie, that's what we went over 2 weeks ago. The compensation agreement, seller broker to buyer broker. Those are the forms from the 2 weeks ago presentation. You guys, please look them up in there. Thank you for putting the name in there. Compensation agreement, seller's broker to buyer's broker. And there was 4 agreements that came out at the same time 3-4 weeks ago, and we went over them, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, that we went over those forms. But yes, get those signed.
Where can I research past meetings? This is my first.
Lori, Michaela wrote in the chat a few minutes ago. If you want to hit the chat button down below on the bottom right, looks like a quote box. You click that, that's the chat. You scroll up to where Michaela just put a link in there, and you click on that link, it'll take you right to it. And then you'll want to bookmark that so you can remember it. So
I don't see it.
You know the chat box at the bottom?
No.
Do you see people with a number 60 over it?
No.
Bottom of your screen? Michaela will email it to you. She'll email you
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Because I have a lot of catching up to do.
I understand, Lori. That's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you know if the new forms in transaction desk? I do not know. I don't know if you use transaction desk, just check it out. I mean, just look up buyer brokerage agreement, see if it's the new one or the old one. The new one says revised 724. You see right here at the bottom. Make sure you're using the EBBA 7TB. That's a transaction broker. That's what the TB stands for. And then revised 724. Okay. Yvonne, did you find a way to reach out to JICA?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you find a way to reach out to JICA? Did you go on the FRI agent page?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right. And if you need his personal information, you can email Michaela for that too. Mark got the YouTube address. Guys, look in the chat for the YouTube address if you're missing it, and bookmark that page, please. Any other questions before we go? All right. Next week, we'll have the attorney going over this, answering your questions. Any of your questions you had from today, please write them down and have them for next week. Any things I can't answer because I'm not an attorney and I don't know how to word the stuff legally. And we'll have those questions for, in fact, if you want to send me some, I would be great. And I'll have him prepared for them. Javier, yes.
Ryan, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. I wanted to make an announcement. I need a referral for a commercial leasing property, preferably that the agent speaks Spanish in Orlando. I have a client looking for a commercial space leasing from 1 to 2 years.
Okay, Vivian can help you with that. She raised her hand, but I know why. She can help you with that.
Who does?
Viviana.
Okay.
Javier, will you put your information in the chat, please?
Never done it.
No, let
Let me figure it out real quick. Hold on.
Give me your phone
I'll
number.
figure it out real quick.
Just tell me.
941 587 0700. 941 587 0700.
There you go, Viv. I recommend Vivian. She does commercial stuff.
And a little commercial, guys. I'm in Sarasota, Bradenton area. If you happen to have buyers, I also have 4 listings that I'm offering. So I'll be more than happy to work with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Javier.
All right.
Yep. Vivian's a commercial agent and she speaks Spanish, so she'll be happy to help you.
Awesome, Vivian. I look forward to your call. I'm driving, so I can't do this. All right.
No hay problema, Javier. Estoy contigo.
Gracias. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Any other questions before we go? Otras preguntas? Nada. Gracias. Everyone have a great night. Thank you very much. Or day. Have a great day. And let me know if you need anything. Send me your questions that you want Dan to answer next week. Dan's the attorney. And send me your questions that you want Dan to answer next week. You can email them to me. I will compile them and forward them to Dan and have him ready for you guys. So anything that we couldn't answer today, just remind me of any questions that you had that I gave you a less than satisfactory answer because I'm not a legal professional. So otherwise, thank you all. You're doing great. Business is good. Keep fighting. This is like I said, guys, you want to get rid of the bad agents and you guys, all the good agents take over. Well, this is what it takes. You got to put in a little bit more than they do. So you can do it. It's easy. We're going to guide you through it. You're going to do great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye. Thank you.